intro in case I get interrupted, but welcome everybody. I'm Bridget Legault, Community Manager with Rainforest here in Calgary, and Amber Rowden is here as well, our community storyteller. So can I turn it over to you, Amber?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Bridget. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Lunch Without Lunch. This is our weekly connection where we connect with each other, get to know what's happening in the ecosystem, and get to know each other. So if you haven't been before, please put an emoji on the screen, introduce yourself in the chat. We want to get to know one another. So if you do the social media thing, follow along with us at Rainforest AB and at Rainforest YEG. We have a steering committee up in Edmonton, a group of volunteers that run the rainforest in Edmonton. They usually join us on Wednesdays. However, they have a lot of events that they're doing up in Edmonton, which is really awesome. I'm going to go over to the next slide. So I'm going to start off with the land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, the Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, the Métis Nation, Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta and in Calgary. For those in the Edmonton area, we acknowledge the traditional lands of the Treaty 6 territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, as well as the Métis. If you're coming from somewhere else in the country or the world, please feel free to share your land acknowledgement and your reconciliation in the chat. And if you're interested in, sharing resources on reconciliation and on land acknowledgements at Lunch Without Lunch, or just to spark that conversation, please connect with me and Bridget. We would be happy to have those conversations and host them. So what is Rainforest Alberta? Well, we're a community of people, of entrepreneurs, of students, investors, folks just doing cool things, building ideas and building connections. And that's what it's all about. So here we have a video to kind of explain what we do at Rainforest.
What does it take to realize an idea or for a seed to sprout? At Rainforest Alberta, we know the answer is rooted in trust. Traditionally, Albertans have cultivated their ideas in established systems. Inputs that don't fit these systems are weeded out. Opportunities for growth are missed. But now, Albertans want a dynamic landscape that can evolve organically, like a rainforest. At Rainforest Alberta, we believe a culture of trust is the fertile soil where ideas grow. Our budding innovation ecosystem is a network of relationships pulling each other up as they push forward in their own field. Trust breaks down barriers. An open, inclusive network increases collaborative innovation. Successful breakthroughs inspire new ideas. A cycle begins. Rainforest Alberta is a movement to amplify trust by cultivating honesty, inclusion, and accountability. How? Our social contract holds us accountable to demonstrate trust across the province. We meet to have honest conversations around collaboration. This leads to more inclusive spaces for everyone to fearlessly build new ideas together. By raising the standard of trust, Alberta's ideas, talent, and resources can be evergreen. Visit rainforestab.ca to sign the social contract and start growing together.
So we use 6 pillars in the rainforest, and they guide our conversations and action, and they're not all weighted equally. So we measure these each year through our scorecard assessment. We have one in Calgary, and Edmonton has one as well. These 6 pillars are culture, leaders, resources, engaged activities, policy and infrastructure, and role model. And so we focus on culture, which is weighted at 30%. And it's the highest focused one at Rainforest because we're all about creating a culture of trust, a culture of breaking barriers, a culture of conversations, and really building new ideas. And so this comes out each year. And each year we ask anyone that's in the ecosystem, no matter how long you've been in the community, to fill out, what we're doing well in the tech and innovation industry, where we can improve. And then we work to make these improvements throughout the year and put them into what we're doing, into the activities that we do. So tips to making the most of Lunch Without Lunch. If this is your first Lunch Without Lunch, we usually have an introduction to the rainforest, and then we have an awesome guest speaker share, what they're kind of up to and what they're doing. And then we have questions and get into that interactive part of the conversation. And then we have networking, which is where the magic happens, getting to know each other. So introduce yourself in the chat. We want to get to know you and make those connections, what you're working on, what you're looking for. Just share in the chat what brings you here today, what you're most curious to learn about. You can connect with individuals through direct messages. Put your camera on. It's always great to see people's faces and get to know each other, put a face to a name. Ask questions that lead with curiosity rather than offering advice. We're all about being curious and learning about each other. You can ask questions and connect on our digital community powered by Inkly, which I'll touch on in a couple seconds. You can check out lunch notes for a capture of today's chat, which is on our Slack channel. Once you sign the social contract, you'll gain access to our Slack channel, and I can also redirect you to that as well. And our recordings are posted on YouTube. So if you missed a session or you want to check out previous sessions, you can check them out on our YouTube channel. So our social contract, our 10 values that we live, work, and play by, they're a code of conduct. They're how we build and move ideas forward. These 10 values are what the rainforest is based on. We ask that if you're joining the community, if they resonate with you, and that you sign the social contract and help us in building the community based on these values. So you can scan that barcode if you want to take out your phone and scan it. I'll also throw the link in the chat as well for you to connect and sign that social contract. And this is our digital community. So if you're curious about anything happening in tech and innovation, in basically anything, it's a great place to connect with individuals. It's a great place to find knowledge that you won't find anywhere else from people working in different industries, different facets of tech and innovation. It's just great to ask questions and get replies. I posted a question on there and gotten lots of replies from it. And it's a great place to just connect and find that tacit knowledge that you can't find anywhere else. It could be a question like, you're looking for a co-founder, you're looking for an idea, you're looking for someone to collaborate with on an idea as well. There's also learnings on there and resources as well. And it's not just based in Calgary, it's across Alberta. So you have access to people all across Alberta who can support you on your journey in innovation. I think that might be it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Bridget, do you want to introduce Dani, or I can introduce Dani? Okay, awesome. So our guest speaker for the hour is the wonderful Dani of Maggie, who is here to take us in an awesome conversation today. Yeah, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you are incredible. I just know it. No, I'm just going to let you go right into it. Like, we're just very excited to have you. And yeah.
You caught me so off guard. I was still muted.
Oh.
Thank you so much. Everyone, I am so thrilled, excited, and albeit a little bit nervous. It's been, I used to do webinars like this all the time. And then, being heads down as one is, and any sort of entrepreneurial journey stepped away from it a bit. So I acknowledge that there's a little bit of nerves today, but anybody that I coach and anytime that I do this, I always remind myself that nerves are incredible energy, meaning that something you're about to talk about is worthwhile, and why I'm here and what I'm doing and the research that I've conducted and what I stand for is something that I am deeply passionate about. So I'm welcoming the nerves as this great motivator. So I do have to take a quick aside to thank another person, because this all started at the Awesome Inventures conference this year, where I met Marty, I know you're here. So good to see you. And Marty introduced me to Krista and Bridget and Amber. And it was from there that they said, you know what, we need to get you into Lunch Without Lunch. So Marty, you are the catalyst, and you are at the core of investing in my IPO, my ideas, perspectives, and opinions by encouraging the Rainforest folks to reach out to me. So thank you for that investment. It was incredible. And you've expanded my network by look at this space today. So I had to do that shout out. I am just going to take a quick minute to share my screen here for my slides, and then we will be good to go. So we are here today to talk about the new IPO, and this is all about investing in the ideas, the perspectives, and opinions of women, particularly when it comes to how those things are showing up and how those things are being represented in critical conversations. So a little bit about the agenda, and then I promise I will do a brief introduction of myself, a little bit more about my background. We're going to talk about the new IPO, what is blocking the new IPO, the investment in the ideas, perspectives, and opinions of women from getting critical investment, and how Maggie, this vision for this edtech startup, is changing the investment landscape for the new IPO. So a little bit more about me. I'm Dani Strang. I am the co-founder of blossoming, blooming new startup, Maggie. And I have had the incredible pleasure of shaping some of Canada's most recognized cultures for over 15 years. My foray, my first opportunity in getting into the tech space was actually becoming Jobber's first head of people and culture. And I joined when Jobber was about 60 to 65 people, and I scaled that business to about 150 people. And since then, worked with some earlier stage companies, but at one point in time in my career, I just knew that there was going to be an opportunity for me to experience what it's like to be a founder, and ultimately found my passion in my own lived experience of climbing the corporate ladder as a woman leader, getting to the point of having that proverbial seat around the table, and then recognizing that this lie that I was telling myself, or this story rather that I was telling myself of once I get there, once I get to that table, my ideas, my perspectives, my opinions, they're going to be celebrated. They're going to be heard. And I'm going to feel super influential as this authentic version of myself. And when I experienced the opposite in a not so malicious way, it was really dehumanizing. And so I started to dig into that, and I'll share a little bit more about Maggie and our vision and our mission and our purpose towards the end of the presentation. So just for, I know that this probably doesn't need to be expressed for most people in this room, but just for sake, and I really like the design of this slide. So this was probably the most fun slide for me to design in the entire presentation. Just wanted to go over what is a typical traditional IPO to set the framework of the example that we are going to use throughout the presentation. And simply, it is a private company becoming a public company and opening up investment to any individual to invest in that organization financially. And when we shift into thinking about the new IPO, which is investing in the ideas and perspectives and opinions of women in terms of being a massive growth lever for businesses, communities, and economies, it's always a good place to start about thinking about where are we at? What is the current landscape? And you heard me already share my own personal example that having a seat at the table does not equal feeling heard. Women are churning out of leadership at the highest rate that we've seen. And it was a recent report put out by Forbes and Bloomberg that says that for every woman that is currently hired into a senior leadership position, 2 women are leaving. So we have a massive leaky bucket when it comes to women who are advocating and actively choosing to stay within leadership positions. And when it comes to women's voices specifically, there's this really incredible book that was at the core of driving us into our problem interviews and advancing this idea of Maggie past an idea, is that women, when it comes to women's participation in what's defined as critical conversations, and these are the kinds of conversations where polarization is there, big decisions are being made, and the impact of those decisions tend to have a really big ripple effect beyond the folks that are in the room. And I know that many of us have experienced those decisions often in our lives already. And in those conversations, it's fascinating that this research really did focus on the political system in the US, from community politics all the way up of the Supreme Court of the US. And it can be applied in corporate settings, most business settings. But what was fascinating is that from community level all the way up to the Supreme Court, you know, where Ruth Bader Ginsburg used to sit, women were participating in those conversations at 2/3 the rate of men. So I started looking at my own experience, what was going on in the world. And for me, it's really trying to understand why. What is stopping women from expressing their ideas, perspectives, and opinions? So we started talking to women, quite simply. And in the fall of 2021, I had conversations with about 56 women, 52% of which were self-identified women of color, something that I'm really proud of. And we asked them a very simple question. In your current place of work, and these women were recent grads all the way up to semi-retired, so very broad walk of life diversity. We asked them, what is, in your current work environment, do you feel comfortable and confident to fully express your ideas, perspectives, and opinions, specifically in those critical conversations? And the shocking reveal of this research is that only 2 women said yes, that they did feel comfortable to fully express their IPOs. And the caveat being, those 2 women had recently started their own businesses where they were in full control of the environment. And they shared with us, if we had asked them that question when they were an employee, they would have said no. So we had this incredible data point that we know we needed to explore further. In addition, when it comes to the current landscape of what is going on and what is stopping women and the world from wholly appreciating the stories, the voices of women, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up this brand new research that just came out. It's always off to the side of my desk. I think I've paged through it about 20 or 30 times already. And the caveat here is that women's perspectives and opinions are still at the margin of decision making. And a couple of critical highlights from this report say, you know, social norms, gender-specific social norms are still just as inhibiting as they were a decade ago. And it's easy to say that's not the case in developed countries, but their index actually indicates the opposite, that developed companies are struggling with this just as much as some of the underdeveloped countries are. Different case scenarios, but still struggling with gender-based norms and how that impacts specifically women and non-binary folks. 9 out of 10 individuals, all genders, women included, hold bias against women. 50% of the world believes men make better political leaders, and that's like a very rough estimate, and they call that out. They don't know exactly, but what they do have pegged down a little bit more specifically is that 43% of people believe that men make better executives than women. And so when you hear this, how does that not create conditions for women to do some pretty incredible shape-shifting, some suppression in order to achieve success, climb the ladder, get to those spaces? And what we've learned through our research is that creates a pretty significant separation from feeling comfortable to express ideas, perspectives, and opinions when they are really needed the most. So at Maggie, we call this the systemic oppression of women's ideas, perspectives, and opinions. And what was really fascinating about our journey so far is when we were conducting the research that I just shared with you, at the same time, we were presented with an opportunity to apply for a content grant. And knowing that typical pathways of investment for women in tech aren't so great, and we received funding through TELUS to create a docuseries, we thought, what better way to explore this a little bit more and explore the ed tech concept, how Maggie is going to shift how women show up in these critical conversations by focusing on the science, by focusing on the condition and the real neurological pathways that are built up in women that impact our ability to invest in our own IPOs, than by exploring it through film. So I wanted to share a little bit of a sneak peek with you today. The docuseries is a 6-part docuseries, and I can share exactly where you can find it later, but I thought it would be a great opportunity, instead of me continuing to talk about this experience for women, that you can actually hear from the women that we interviewed ourselves. So I'm just gonna do a quick switch of where I'm sharing here. Okay, does everybody see a black screen? And I can't see you right now. So if you can, somebody can visualize or vocally tell me yes or no.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then somebody just give me a shout out to make sure the sound is coming through okay.
You're good.
We reference the magazine club as an unlearning platform because women do not lack the confidence. They do not lack the education. They do not lack the lived experience. And yet when we think about critical, important conversations today, women are still only participating in those conversations at 2/3 the rate of their male peers.
We cannot be passive people in the room. Every day, we need to think about how we are creating better space for women to have voice, because it is critical for our future.
Even in situations where we are meant to be supporting one another, we aren't creating the conditions for the candid sharing of the really difficult experiences.
When women are systemically oppressed, it is impossible to be in a place of possibility, of hope, of creativity, of optimism, of options. We miss out. We miss out collectively. All of us miss out on the gifts that women could be bringing that would better all of us. The ripple effects of that are generational, are so significant. And so where can we begin to invite and solve for these challenges? Where can we move from scarcity to abundance? Where can we move from perfectionism and individuality to collective community?
So often enough, I would get my own innovative ideas, perspectives, or opinions. My better not reflex would be triggered. And because of that pattern, my stress response was also triggered in my body, which means, and even talking about the better not reflex right now, my hands are getting sweaty. This is how real it is. So what this means is that you all of a sudden have these enormous physical barriers associated with your own stress response. Mine is sweaty hands. Other women experience feeling flushed, inability to really access higher level thinking like creativity. And so then you just convince yourself that it's, better not, it's better to just not say that thing. Last year, as a part of our own foundational research for the magazine club, Jen and I had the opportunity to speak to just an incredible group of diverse women. And the commentary that we received back from these women were, I am just realizing now, after speaking with you, Jen and Dani, how guilty I felt, how hard on myself I was when it's all of this encoding and conditioning and this really strong better not reflex that has made it almost impossible for me to push past it. It's like ironclad walls.
I think my better not reflex currently for me, I'm almost perceiving it as a protection. Something inside of me that's telling me that I shouldn't do something. It might not always be the right reflex or the right thing in the moment, but I'm starting to understand its role and its function in my life and trying to accept it. And I think that's the only way that I can transform it into being something that turns into a voice of empowerment.
If you really look closely and listen in spaces that have power, whether that's in the House of Commons or in boardrooms, or like even in family environments. Men still take up a lot of space and have that power, and that's by design from the patriarchy. We tend to think about this in business, but it could be within one's family. It can be within one's relationship. And it's heartbreaking. We speak about this because there has been so much progress for women, and I think such a mainstreaming of discussions around gender. Yet, if we look at the data and we really pay attention, there's still a lot of work, and we have to call that out.
Am I invisible? Does anyone see me? Ooh, I feel icky because I keep stuffing down the stuff that I really need to contribute and say.
But I always like taking a look at power specifically, and then also asking, okay, well, what's that like for an Indigenous woman? What's that like for a Black non-binary person? What's that like for a working class, older Asian woman? And then you start getting a clearer picture. And it becomes even harder for some women to be able to speak up because of what they're risking in doing so.
One of the goals for all of you to embrace and own and hold yourself accountable for, too, is to create a space in which Jennifer can push herself to say something about a specific topic she might not say, or Fatima, instead of saying 90% of the thing, she's actually going to say 100% of the thing and not leave that little nugget of her full expression behind, because that nugget is actually the most critical bit of what she's trying to express.
We do have the opportunity to start pulling apart our conditioning, asking questions to ourselves. What is the origin of this belief that I have? Kick the tires a little bit. Be curious.
How would you express this before your title, before the world, before your job, before life got a hold of you? That's what it is that we're asking you to joyfully reconnect with.
The power of conversation is about people coming together and talking to each other, listening, building off of each other. And we definitely need more of that right now.
Dani, you're muted.
Thank you. I muted during the film because my golden retriever started snoring. And it was very loud. It's just saying thank you for watching that. It's always fun for me to watch it. Every time I see it, I see something new. And that's just a teeny tiny little clip from episode 3. I'm just going to reshare my slide deck, a few more slides, and then we'll get to the networking bit. There we go. Everybody can see the slide? Yes. Okay, perfect. So just to recap, one of the things that I wanted to naturally come up in the video, which leads into the entire purpose of Maggie, is this idea of a better not reflex. And so in our research and through talking with women and breaking down our own lived experience, we realized that how women show up in critical conversations, one, we learn that women tend to blame themselves, but two, in understanding some of the recent neuroscience, we know that all of these experiences that you might have as a woman over your career of, sexism or misogyny or bias or discrimination, that you notice that, maybe your idea isn't taken seriously as a male counterpart, or you speak something and it's picked apart. These are all pieces of data within your body and within your brain. And taken in isolation, not a big deal. But when you collect them, say over, a 15-year career like mine, and all of a sudden you get that position that you've been working so hard for, and your ideas and your perspectives, those very important, authentic bits of who you are as a human, aren't appreciated the same as some of your peers. And we know this to be a gendered issue. That's a really dehumanizing thing. And that has the same chemical impact on our brains as a big T traumatic event. And big T traumatic events are things like being involved in an earthquake, being diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. And so this is the impact that it's having on women themselves. And that's where we as an organization and as the docuseries really wanted to dive in. You know, the research that was done about how women show up in critical conversations, that's where it ended, just at participation. But nobody went up to those women after those conversations to say, hey, did you say what you really needed to say? Or were you being amenable? Were you not wanting to rock the boat? And how is that taking up space for you emotionally afterwards? And we know, full stop, that women tend to get into guilt and shame spirals. And that is not only detrimental to women, but it is detrimental to our businesses and societies as well. So the better not reflex is this very real neurological pathway in our bodies. And there's a certain type of learning that is required in order to retrain neurological pathways in our body. And this gets into how you can start investing in the ideas, perspectives, and opinions of women. Because right now, those IPOs are widely privately held entities. And just like a traditional IPO, Maggie is in the business of supporting women establish new neurological pathways, reducing the power of their better not reflex in critical conversations, so that the stories and the perspectives of women aren't just the spackling in the conversation, they are overflowing the cup. And the recognition that so many of these norms silence, the biggest investment that we can make right now is supporting each other with unlearning. And that's that quote that you saw at the end of the video clip. This is all about shifting the narrative from allyship to investment. And the key market opportunity here is the investment in unlearning. And this is where the platform of Maggie comes into play. And we call Maggie the world's first unlearning platform for women, because we have created a really unique proprietary space where, through the deliberation of journalism, really fantastic independent magazines like The Walrus, who very prominently participated in the creation of our docuseries, those deliberations in small cohorts of women recreate the space where we go through this self-abandonment process and let our better not reflex shut down the full expression of an idea, perspective, and opinion. And instead, what we're offering women is a safe place to practice reconnecting with that and helping your body learn that on the other side of your expression, you can be safe, you can be celebrated. And over time, the practice in a safe space will allow you to contribute differently in critical conversations in not so safe spaces, ultimately shifting how women show up. And the importance of unlearning, it's all about the counter narrative that we're hearing so much about women in leadership right now. We don't need more mentorship, specific experience, time, or exposure. We have what we need. But what is truly needed when we look at the war against these biases that the UN recently highlighted is how women are trusting their own idea, perspectives, and opinions and investing in themselves. But then how we're working with the environments to create those safe spaces where the ideas, perspectives, and opinions of women are starting to be valued and appreciated as much as our male peers. So as it is right now, Maggie's very much in design form. There's some exciting things taken in play. We actually pilot, a big part of the docuseries was piloting the Maggie practice, and you will hear a specific call out in the docuseries. We reference the Magazine Club. That was our previous name before we went through some branding in January. And everything that you need to know about who we are and what we're about, and my big call to action here is just go to our website at joinmaggie.org, sign up for our emails. We are going to be launching into some additional beta testing specifically for women to get the MVP of our EdTech platform to more people. So I hope after today you have a better understanding, and I'll leave you with this. One way to start with the new IPO is to simply go to the important people in your life, go to the important women in your life and ask them, in your current spaces, whether it's workplace, communities, boards, volunteering, how confident do you feel to express your innermost ideas, perspectives, and opinions. And what's stopping you? And just listen. And that's the beginning of the unlearning process. And selfishly, of course, on our website, you'll find all the information that you need to watch the docuseries in its entirety. And I hope you do so. And I hope you share it with as many people as you can in your network, and stay tuned for what's coming down the pipeline with Maggie in the coming months. Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to hear about your questions or your feedback or anything more that I can share about Maggie and who we are.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dani. That was a really, really powerful video, especially, but presentation entirely. I wouldn't mind hopping into Krista's comment. Krista, I don't know if you mind unmuting. I pick on you because I know you can. I know you love sharing your IPOs. And I think it's really important because Peter also asked about how men can support, and unlearning is obviously a very much more difficult than, just saying, unlearning for all of us. But Krista's saying she's identified patterns in her career when she speaks up, when she shares her IPOs. And I think there'd be some overlap in Peter's question around how everyone can support. So do you want to share a bit more, Krista?
Yeah, I would. And one showed up actually in the chat, so it's clear and actionable. So I wanted to, and it happened to me when I was speaking to a very senior education leader in Alberta, went through all the work that we've done to set up our company, creating the curriculum, all the testing, setting up the global standard. And his first question after I shared all that was, have you met or do you know this other product manager? And I was like, what does that matter? If I know them? Like, I see that a lot, that if somebody shares an idea about something, especially women, we're seek to validate whether or not we know about another person doing work in this area. And if there's one piece of advice I can give to men, especially, let's just stop doing that as a practice. We understand you think that you're trying to be helpful, but it actually is really degrading to us in that we can't be celebrated for our contribution first before you try to recommend someone else's to overpower ours. The imbalance is hard enough as it is. So I think if that is one thing that we think the intention comes from a really great place, we know this. But the impact though on us sharing our IPOs I still remember that comment, that one sentence to this day. And it's not the first time I heard it in my career, and it's a continual thing. So, and because I saw it show up in the chat here, I thought I would mention it as being a really valuable lesson for everyone to learn from. But the way that question was responded to after you wrote yours was, that holding back to hold space. Like, allyship means you have to give something up, to give something to someone else. So what are you giving up in that conversation? Either that sentence of, in that my example, sharing that you also know someone who's doing a thing, you should connect with them. Instead, how about, oh my gosh, Dani, you're incredible. I loved hearing this story. Is there anything in my network that I could contribute, or my time?
And Krista, I wanna jump in and thank you for sharing this. This is incredible. You're giving a real-time insight into how our brain works and how the better not reflex is formed. So I have a question for you, a follow-up question. After that scenario, and this was fairly recent because Tacit Edge itself is, a couple of years in the making, right? In a similar scenario, what was the story going on in your mind? So you had this conversation with this very senior person of influence, this very senior gentleman of influence who, after sharing your idea, created a not so great experience for you. That's data for your brain. So share with me how and have you brought that experience forward into future conversations in terms of any sort of pause or story or narrative that is going through your brain after that with additional senior folks in the space? Tell me more about that.
I didn't. I literally shared it with my co-founder, and I was like, there it is again. And she was like, yeah, okay, now what? Yeah. And it was, the other version of that, and I'm not sure if any other women want to contribute, that it can be in a room where folks are verbally thinking with their mouths, right? And they can ideate and very, very clearly not very well thought through things, but we're just spitballing, we're ideating. But if I were to contribute, the feedback for me after that session was, you should think things through a little bit more before you contribute, Krista, right? Whereas my peers, male peers sitting side by side, were not at all. And so the story I'm telling myself is I can't contribute my ideas until they are way past flushed out and validated. But we all know that if we don't share ideas and get feedback, we don't get to the good stuff at like a fraction of the rate as the folks who are sharing, who are getting that feedback. So the deprogramming for women, and the story I tell myself is, even if I think it's a shitty first draft, I'm saying it. And then we can ideate together, because I'm open and welcome to that. But this is something that in our coaching practice with the women who are our students, this is the biggest thing to overcome, getting them to share their presentations first, right? Like men will share their presentations 5 times before a woman will. And so we speak to it clearly now in our courses, like, women, we need you. It may feel gross, but just do it, because that iteration time is holding you back. And that's why your career is not accelerating at the same rate and pace as your male peer. Your feedback loops are too long. You're not getting enough of them.
So how I can relate to that from the neuroscience perspective, and again, this is the better not reflex in play, is that every time throughout your career that our ideas, perspectives, and opinions are a part of our humanity. You only have to go as far to Maslow's hierarchy of needs to understand that the expression of those things and feeling influential for the expression of those things, feeling that your ideas matter and have weight and contribute to society, that's self-actualization. That's the second from the top in the pyramid. And so how our brains work and how neurological pathways work is that every time an idea is questioned, every time it's undervalued or not taken seriously or shut down, and then a male peer says something similar and it's celebrated, every time that happens to us directly, and every time we witness that happen to our women peers, although it might not be directly aimed at us, this is data that our brain collects. And there's this reflex, the better not reflex, that shows up. And the more we're exposed to those things, the stronger the better not reflex becomes. And so interestingly, when I asked women in our research, okay, so the better not reflex is there. We know that this conditioning, that these neurological pathways exist. What are you doing? What are the strategies that you're putting into place to overcome the better not reflex, so it isn't paralyzing you and stifling your career? And what every single woman, all of the 56 women that I spoke to, told me is, I just tell myself to say the thing next time, which tells me that there is a real lack of language and understanding of what is going on biologically, because our better not reflex is connected to our stress response. So when it starts its narrative in your mind, you are officially butting up against very real physiological flight, fight, freeze response triggers. And we all know and recognize how difficult it is to overcome those things. But then women leave the conversation and blame themselves and get into the guilt and blame spiral. So for us, it was, how do we start? What is it that women need from a learning perspective, or rather an unlearning perspective, to start? How do we rebuild neurological pathways for women? And that's where we actually look to Toastmasters, the #1 business in the world that is like exceptionally accredited for rebuilding neurological pathways, is Toastmasters. They never promise to get rid of your nerves. And if you want to be a world-renowned speaker on product management, Krista, it actually has nothing to do with what you are saying. You could be talking about the benefit of square eggs for an entire year, but it has everything to do with the fact that you are facing your nerves and speaking through them anyway. And that is the entire practice of Maggie, using journalism, which tends to be a reflection of the big stuff that's going on in the world, that in a professional setting, women most often aren't allowed to have very strong opinions on ideas related to solutions of these things. We are telling women, we want you to build your opinions, your perspectives, and ideas on these very real topics. And slowly but surely, we're giving you, in the psychology world, it's called positive corrective experience, new data for your brain, that you're going to do the scary thing in a safe space. You're going to say the thing that you typically don't say, or fully say the thing instead of leaving that little nugget behind. And instead, on the other side of that, you're met with celebration and encouragement. And slowly but surely over time, we can start to think about rebuilding neurological pathways in the brain. And this is critical when we think about shifting how women can show up in really important conversations and how we're shaping these big decisions in the world.
I just want to say really quickly, I just made a connection between public speaking training and a shift in my career. And you are so correct. We actually went to a program called Speaker Labs, and it changed my life. It was some of the hardest work I've ever done, but it changed the trajectory of my career. And I realized it wasn't just the public speaking it gave me. It was something different. So thank you for that, Dani. It was huge insights.
I hate stopping this conversation. I also want to give everybody in the room an opportunity to share and spend some time chatting about this. And so just what's going to happen here for the next 15 minutes, do not drop off, please. This is your opportunity to get to know others in the community and for your opportunity to share your IPOs in a smaller breakout room. So let's head over and do that. And men who are asking what I can do, it made me think of an acronym that Roy Group teaches, WAIT. Why am I talking? It's a simple tool you can use when we have that kind of share reflex where we want to speak and share whatever it is, if we're extroverted or maybe the dominant kind of force in the room. So let's all practice that WAIT maybe reflex and ensure that everybody has that equity of voice in these breakouts. So I'm going to open them up, and at 5:02 we will come back with some really important community announcements. So again, please do not leave. This is where a lot of magic happens and where some of your deeper connections can be formed. So I will open the rooms right now. And if you have any problems, just let me know. I knew everyone would wait to the bitter end of their breakout before coming back. There's a couple more minutes here. There's coming in. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're slowly here. We'll give it another few seconds. Okay, I think we have you all back. It's very, I don't know if it's so slow on everyone else's end. It's so slow on my end. Greg, I know you're involved with Toastmasters, so if anybody has interest there, I'm sure Greg would love to share more on Toastmasters too, because that seemed to be a hot topic. So I hope everybody had time to connect and chat a little bit more about Maggie and everything Dani shared today, as far as like some pretty impactful statistics and data there and action that we can all take. So Dani, I know many would like to keep this conversation going, and I don't know, maybe we do a follow-up, maybe a Maggie exercise, like an exercise that you do through Maggie would be pretty cool. I don't know if others would enjoy that, but I know I would. So a huge thank you to you. I'm not sure if you can stay on past the hour, but if you can for a few minutes, I'm sure there'll be others who maybe want to share or connect with you. So many thanks. Before we get into the broader, lots of hearts there, the broader community announcements, I want to give Phil from Be Local an opportunity to share an opportunity going on. I'll just let you take it away, Phil.
Awesome, thanks, Bridget. And hey, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Philip. I'm the steward of the Be Local network in Calgary, a network that believes that doing good is good for business. I'm also the lead producer for Social Venture Institute, and that's coming up next month. And I would love to extend an invite to all of you. If anything that Dani was saying was resonating with you, I think a lot of what happens at Social Venture Institute will kind of connect with your heart. We're proud to say that last year, 60% of the people in the room were women, and 30% of those who attended were people of color. And so when we think of these gatherings for entrepreneurs, we often think of pale, male, and stale. And we really try to shake that up, because as Dani was talking about, there's incredible wisdom from people in the room, and oftentimes we're not hearing that. And so Social Venture Institute, in a nutshell, unofficially, it's basically summer camp for entrepreneurs looking to change the world. And social venture leaders looking to change the world. And so we've got some amazing keynotes this year. So Sona Khosla, the Chief Impact Officer for Benevity, is going to be one of our keynotes. Maranike from Kemet Pharmaceutical is going to be another one of our speakers. We've got John from Earthware, who's going to be one of our case studies. So we've got amazing caliber speakers, but then we've also got Bison Barbecue by the River. We're going to have some jig dance lessons. We're going to have some Métis artist performances. We're going to do sunrises and sunsets. We're going to really embed Indigenous wisdom and nature into the mix, because as we know, if you're trying to change the world, we can't just go at it with our regular ways of thinking. We need to change our environment. And so the location this year is really special. It's going to be at Métis Crossing up north by Edmonton. And so Dani, that's in your neck of the woods. I'd love to see you there. And anyone else up north, I know it's always like Calgary centric. I uprooted everything to be closer to you folks. And so Métis Crossing, Indigenous wisdom, nature, beauty, stillness, and some powerful inspiration. Thank you for throwing the link in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to connect with me directly. August 23rd to 25th. Thank you for such an inspirational talk, Dani, and just a strong reminder that diversity is not just a nice to have, it's a fundamental requirement to innovation. And so thank you for that, to kicking us off today, and hopefully look forward to seeing many of you next month at the end of August at Métis Crossing.
I really wish I could go. I'm going to be away, but it sounds amazing. Don't miss out. And I think if finances are a barrier, I think there are opportunities there too, right? So not to overstep, but I just throw that out there for entrepreneurs. Awesome. Any other community announcements in our last minute here together? I know people are dropping off for the rest of their day. Amber?
Yeah. If you're ever wanting to be a guest or host, be a guest or host on the Leaders Innovators Big Ideas podcast. We're always looking for guest or host. Share your story, share someone else's story. It's a great way to connect with people that, you know, maybe you're nervous to talk to them, but you could be like, hey, be on the podcast. I want to chat with you. It's just a great way to get to know each other. I'll throw the link in the chat, or connect with me or Bridget or Al, and happy to get you on the podcast.
Someone interview Phil about SPI and Be Local. If they don't, I will.
That's a good idea.
Do that. Yeah. Susanna, you should interview him.
Yeah. Oh, that would actually be really, I would love to. Two things. One is there's Lobby Fest happening September 13th to 15th. It's about reimagining downtown and having community. So I'm kind of reaching out and doing some volunteer community work to bring other voices in, which I think is super important outside of our downtown normal silo people. And number two is I'm working, doing something for Rainforest as well, doing something fun for Innovation Week called Rainforest Squares, which is a take on Hollywood squares with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, to like bring everyone together, and really gonna like pull on community and have a lot of fun there. So if you're interested, please shout out. And also Inclusive Calgary, inclusive usability testing, always looking for people to be testers and things like that too. So please connect. And that's all I got.
Ooh, you got a lot. Inclusivity networking event, I think, tomorrow. And who's going to Folk Fest? Anybody will be at Folk Fest this weekend? Don't all look so excited. I'll see you there, Phil. Apparently you and me. Okay, thanks everybody. It is the top of the hour, so have a great rest of the afternoon. And we'll stay on here for a few minutes, see if anybody wants to chat with Dani or whatnot. So have a good one. We'll see you next week.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you. Everyone.